Okay, you crazy, crazy people. Let's do some more learning. Hi, I'm now in Louisville. I was in Louisville yesterday, but now I'm at the hotel. Um, and everything went awesome with Ed Rising, and we had some people got won the state championship in their stuff, and so I think that's real awesome. So here we go. So I'm virtually glad to see you guys, and I have nothing but virtual good news today. Remember that there's a six-question quiz on Monday, and that we have, and three will be over the lesson from yesterday, and three will be over the introduction to colonization. So, colonization. A lot of times people use the word colonization and imperialism interchangeably. Technically, colonization is a type of imperialism where you send your people and your people move there and they kind of take over. Always think of the 13 colonies and you'll be cool on that. I don't know if this is bright enough. Well, I hope you can see my beautiful face, children. If not, I know you're sorely sad. All right. So, um, let me see how this is set up. Yeah, this will be okay. So the intro here talks about how in Africa the Europeans were they would hide English from the natives. They thought that maybe if the natives would learn English, that they might start to rise up against them, and then they didn't want to be seen as equals in language. It's a nice little story that talks about just how intense things were in Central Africa. So we're going to talk about a lot of these countries: England, France, not so much Germany. Good God, you don't want to hear about Belgium, Portugal, Russia, and the U.S. We're all going to have colonies, and they're all going to be ruled differently. Um, but when you look at what Strayer, our author, is going to call the Afro-Asian Pacific world, talking about Africa, and then he's really talking about Southeast Asia and then East Asia. When um, you think about China and Japan, just empires are growing and becoming bigger and stronger. So the first, so we're going to call this the second wave of colonization. The first one being what happened in the 1500s, 1600s. The original moving of Europeans mainly to the Americas. But it's not just England. Don't think about just England with colonies. Germany, Italy, the U.S., Japan, they're all going to start doing this too. It's a lot different than the first wave because um, the um, the first wave is going to be a lot of settlement, and it's going to be the destruction of the native populations mainly because of disease, right, and the spread of disease by the Europeans. And so here, that's not going to happen because it's not going to take place in the Americas where the people aren't um, the so the people that are going to be colonized in this time period are going to be have those same immunities to the diseases that the Europeans had. And for the Industrial Revolution, that's going to be the major thrust of this, the major power. And we're going to see a lot of informal control, informal, sorry, empires. And once again, don't forget my na 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 na, um, my machine gun theory of the powerful Europeans having more firepower. Um, so there's a quote in our textbook that you may have even heard before, that Europeans would say whenever they would think things were getting rough in their colonies, they would say, "Whatever happened, we have got the Maxim gun, and they have not." And a Maxim gun is the British version of the Gatling gun, and this is something, that little saying right there. You might see it again because it's important that it explains the firepower that they had. Okay, so check out this quote from Strayer. Gathering and hunting bands in Australia, agricultural village societies or chiefdoms on Pacific Islands and in Africa, pastoralists of the Sahara and Central Asia, residents of states large and small, and virtually everyone in the large and complex civilization of India and Southeast Asia, all of them alike lost political sovereignty and the freedom of action they had previously exercised. All right, so that's a pretty good encompassing statement of what's happening here. That these people are going to be taken over politically. So the biggest thing that we're going to talk about today is going to be in these maps, and how these different places became colonies. Um, so it's important to know where this stuff happened, and so that's what we're going to talk about today. We'll talk more about how and why it happened on Monday. But let's talk about where today. Start off with India and Indonesia. Remember that it was this guy, um, um, come on, Vasco da Gama. Vasco da Gama comes around the southern tip of India, around the southern tip of Africa, and up to India. And he's going to be the first European to reach India by sea, and he's going to open up Portugal, being in India and in Southeast Asia. But what you need to remember is Portugal only matters for a hot second, one hot second, and that's basically Vasco da Gama. Um, right after that, you're going to see the British and the Dutch show up and take over. We're going to talk about the scramble for Africa here in a second. It's going to be a really big thing. We'll talk about Australia and New Zealand, and then go a little bit more specific here in a second. So, this word, the scramble for Africa, there's actually a cartoon that goes with it. Did I have the cartoon for you? I don't have the cartoon for you, but so one thing I would write for the scramble for Africa out from the side is Berlin pizza. Berlin pizza. Berlin. Berlin pizza. Okay, so this guy here, Otto von Bismarck, or Captain Pointy Hat, is going to be the first leader, the first military leader of unified Germany. And one of the first things he does is he calls together the Berlin Conference, Berlin city in Germany. And he is, even though he has a pointy hat and he looks like he's ready to go to war, he's trying to stop a war. And he says, "Hey, everybody, come to Germany and let's sit down with a big old map of Africa and let's divide it up. Let's cut it up like a pizza." The Berlin pizza. Aha. That's why they call it an AP class. And the Berlin pizza is just that. We're going to cut up different chunks of Africa and give it to different people The important thing here is that we're not giving a piece of Africa to anybody who is, think about the answer, African. Yes, no Africans are going to get a piece of Africa, and that sucks. And that's what we have. So we're gonna have this map set up specifically so because remember the Berlin Conference is in the late 1800s, and you've got everybody's got their guns. Everybody's ready to go to war. Everybody has their bicycle that they got on Christmas morning, right? And they're just waiting for that first day, that first warm day in like March that they can get out and ride their brand new bicycle around. And by riding their brand new bicycle around, I mean kill everybody. So we'll come back and talk more about the Berlin Pizza and the Berlin Conference as we go on. But one of the biggest things is okay. We've got, I don't know, 20 um, republics inside here, um, maybe closer to 30. But compare that to ethnic groups, cultural groups, and tribes in Africa. Look at the difference. Okay. And so these are ethnic groups throughout Africa, and you can see that if they divided up Africa, this is the way Africa was divided up in the first place, and so you're probably going to see that they're going to split. They're going to split ethnic groups in two. They're going to put ethnic groups that are warring together, and it's just going to be a bad, bad, bad situation. The Berlin Pizza. Um, and then we talk about Australia and New Zealand. That's a lot like earlier American colonization. When you think of someone from New Zealand, you probably don't think of a Maori person, a person who's a native from there. You probably think of just a random white dude that's like, "Hey, nay, hello, I'm in New Zealand." And so those people weren't the people that were originally there. Same thing there. These European diseases are going to are going to kill a wide amount of the people in New Zealand and in Australia. And today, only 2.4% of people living in Australia are native, and only 15% of people living in New Zealand are native. And I think the amount of natives in the U.S. is comparable to the amount of Aborigines in Australia. So yeah, okay. So Taiwan and Korea, we already talked about that. They get taken by Japan, right? And so look at this Japanese empire map. You can see chunks, even chunks of Russia get taken, big chunks of China. Look at all of Southeast Asia, the Florida of Asia. Hello, Manchuria. Hello, Manchuria. The Florida of Asia. All is going to be anything red here is Japan. The Philippines. So we won't talk about the Spanish American War because that's really an A push thing. But but the it is something to know that the the U.S. wins the Spanish American War, and they get a lot. Um, we get Cuba, we get um, we we get the Philippines. Those are the two big ones. We get Puerto Rico. And so these are going to become colonies that are taken over by the U.S. And so that's something to think about. All right. Another thing to think about is you are an American citizen. You need to know this name. It's Queen Liliuokalani. Liliuokalani. And I've mentioned her before. She was the Queen of Hawaii. The Queen of Hawaii, because Hawaii was a nation, it was a country of people. And when the Americans showed up with their guns, she says, "Please don't take my country. Please let my people be free." And the United States said, "That's not going to happen. We're either going to massacre everybody, or you're going to give up the country." And they gave up the country, and the country became now a state. And so, when you think about Hawaii, think about all the native people in Hawaii and how they, you know, how complicated their patriotism might be today, or lack thereof. Um, Speaking of patriotism, Liberia is awesome. No, Ethiopia is awesome. Liberia is kind of shady. It begins something interesting. um, so after the American Civil War, the United States takes a chunk of Africa, a little tiny chunk of Africa on the west coast, and they name it Liberia, um, with the root word being lib, meaning free. And that's where the freed a decent amount of freed U.S. slaves go. And it was this idea, you know, you've got people who really believe that Africans should be in Africa to make Africa better. And this was a lot of the Liberian leaders thought that. It's very complicated, but what happens is in Liberia, um, the um, the freed slaves are going to be sent there by the United States government. And something that's really sad is that the former American slaves and the descendants of former American slaves end up enslaving the natives there and taking land from them. And there really is enslavement that happens in Liberia, from former slaves. And that breaks my heart. So Ethiopia is just hardcore, man. I had a student from Ethiopia. He's awesome, and it's my, I don't know, maybe my second favorite country on the planet, next to the good old red, white, and blue. Um, and so what happens is, here's stupid Italy. They just became a country, right? They go to the Berlin conference and they're like, "Hey, let's have us some pizza and take us some places. It's a me, Mario," and they screw it up. They roll into Liberia, does Italy, and they just get their butts handed to them. And the Ethiopians are gonna they're gonna scrounge to find weapons, and they're gonna make deals with other countries to get soldiers in, and the Ethiopians kick out the Italians. They kick out the Italians, and it's such a uplifting story of a group that just fought back. And so Ethiopia ends up being um, uh, the only uh, place in Africa that's controlled by Africans, um, top down. And so Ethiopia, you gotta love Ethiopia. And finally, we'll talk about Siam. You may have heard of like a Siamese cat. That means they're from Siam. So up until the late 1800s, there's not a country called Thailand. It's a country called Siam. And what they do is they're going to be. Let me see if I have a map here. I do. So Siam is here, and you've got two kings of Siam, a dad and a son, and they're going to go to France and say, "Hey, France, we noticed that you guys have French Indochina. You probably want a buffer zone between you and England, because what if you and England go to war, right? So why don't you guys let Siam stay free?" And then they run over to England and they say, "Hey, England, I noticed that you guys are here and you probably don't want France to come over and start messing with you guys because you got Burma and India and all these places. Why don't you guys just let Siam stay free? Let us be a buffer zone, Siam buffer zone." And so that's what happens. And Siam, Thailand, they're going to become Thailand because they're the Thai people, and their nationalism is going to grow there as well. And there you go. You've got a buffer zone, and Siam stays free. And so those are some of the specific situations. But look here, guys, at India being completely controlled by England, and we'll talk about that a lot more later on. You've got the Dutch down here. The Netherlands have the East Indies. France in South East Asia for the most part. The U.S. are going to have the Philippines. Okay. And Japan's going to start being a problem, right? And then you have China here, China being independent but taken over financially. And that is the lesson for today, my sweet children. Man, when I can't see you guys, I can get this done quickly. I'm a very efficient cyber teacher. So yeah, thank you guys for being awesome. 6 question quiz on Monday shouldn't be a big deal. I really do appreciate you guys being nice to the sub and respectful. And if you have any questions this weekend, just shoot me an email and I will reply to it with some smart aleck remark about something that you don't understand because I'm an old man. All righty. See you later, alligators. Hasta la pasta. Hang up the computer now. Somebody stop it, please. God.